The town of Lysogorsk lay in the hollow of a valley, a place where fog clung stubbornly to the ground long after sunrise. It was the sort of town that looked the same no matter the decade. The peeling paint on the houses, the rusted gates, the crooked cobblestone paths, none of it ever changed. People there did not expect much from life, and outsiders almost never came. Perhaps that was why Oksana noticed immediately how the air felt when she arrived. Too still, too thick, as if the town itself were listening. She had been sent by her editor to write a travel piece about forgotten provincial settlements. A weekend of interviews, a few photographs of old churches, and she could return to the city. That was the plan, but plans meant nothing in Lysogorsk. On her first evening, she sat in the only cafe sipping bitter coffee while the old radio crackled. The locals spoke quietly at their tables, glancing at her without warmth. She asked simple questions about the town's history, but most answered with vague gestures or silence. Finally, the woman at the counter leaned close while pouring more coffee. Her hands trembled and her voice dropped to a whisper. "You'll hear about the house," she said. "Everyone does. If you value yourself, stay away. It listens." The words should have been laughable, the kind of village superstition she could turn into colorful filler for her article, but something in the woman's eyes made Oksana uneasy. It wasn't mischief or the thrill of scaring an outsider, it was genuine fear. She didn't sleep well that night. The inn was clean but suffocatingly quiet, and when she turned off the lamp, the dark seemed too absolute. At some point she dreamed of walking narrow corridors, walls gleaming faintly like wet glass. She woke gasping, heart pounding, certain someone stood beside the bed. When she switched on the light, there was no one. Only the mirror above the desk, showing her pale face. The next day, by coincidence, or perhaps because nothing in Lysogorsk was truly coincidence, she met Igor. He was younger, a student of history who had grown up there but now lived in the city for his studies. He had returned only for holidays, yet he carried the same restless unease she felt. When she asked about the house, expecting dismissal, he surprised her by nodding grimly. "You want to see it?" he asked. And so, in the brittle light of late afternoon, they walked beyond the main street, past broken fences where weeds grew tall. The mirror house appeared between skeletal trees. At first Oksana thought it was simply another ruin, but then she felt the air change, colder, thicker, as though she had stepped into the breath of some great creature. The building sagged on one side, shutters rotting, roof warped. Yet its presence was undeniable, a waiting mouth in the woods. Igor spoke without looking at it. Merchant built it in the 1800s, collected mirrors from everywhere he traveled, Italy, Germany, France. He filled the house with them. People thought it eccentric, but then his family died, one after another. No cause, just gone. He was last. They found him sitting in front of a mirror with eyes white as bone. The door gave way at Igor's push. Inside, dust swirled in heavy shafts of light. The walls were lined with mirrors, leaning at odd angles, some cracked, some warped, all coated with gray. Oksana stepped closer to one and nearly recoiled. Her reflection seemed stretched, eyes too large, lips crooked. When she tilted her head, the image hesitated, lagging by a fraction of a second. Another mirror shivered. She had not touched it. It rippled as though something pressed from the other side. "Did you say?" "I always see it," Igor interrupted. His face was pale, every time. The air inside the house was colder than outside. Each step on the warped floorboards groaned like a warning. Dust coated everything, yet the mirrors looked alive, their surfaces faintly trembling as if stirred by unseen breath. Oksana tried to steady her hands as she raised her camera. Through the lens, the mirrors did not behave as they should. Her own reflection fractured, multiplied, stretched into thin silhouettes that bent at impossible angles. Some seemed to move faster than she did, others lagged, their mouths whispering soundless words. The longer she looked, the less certain she felt that the figures were even her at all. She lowered the camera quickly. "I shouldn't have come here," she muttered. Igor stood rigid beside her. His jaw was tight, eyes darting between mirrors like a hunted animal. "You're already inside. Leaving doesn't erase it." They explored cautiously. The deeper rooms were worse, corridors narrowing into sharp corners, mirrors stacked from floor to ceiling. Some were antique, frames gilded and curling like frozen fire. Others were plain, cracked sheets nailed to walls without care. The air seemed thicker with each step. Oksana's breath fogged faintly, though it was not cold enough. At the end of one corridor, she found the great hall. Light seeped in through broken shutters, scattering across dozens of mirrors that faced one another in a maze of reflections. It felt infinite, a hall without end, where one wrong step might carry her into another version of herself and never return. "Do you hear it?" Igor whispered. At first she thought he meant the creaks of wood or the faint rustle of trees outside. Then she realized beneath all that there was a hum, low and constant, vibrating against her bones. Not sound but pressure, a chorus too deep for ears. Her chest tightened, her hands trembled. In one mirror she saw herself, but her mouth was moving, forming words she could not hear. The reflection's eyes were wide, urgent. Suddenly Igor grabbed her arm and yanked her back toward the door. His face was pale, glistening with sweat. "You looked too long," he hissed. "That's how it begins." They stumbled into daylight, gasping as though they had escaped drowning. Yet even outside, the silence of the town felt heavier. The house loomed behind them, patient, unshaken by their flight. That night Oksana dreamed again of corridors. This time the mirrors were shattered, jagged edges gleaming. She walked barefoot, glass slicing her feet, but felt no pain. The reflections crawled out from the broken frames, wide-eyed, whispering her name in unison. When she woke, her sheets were damp with sweat, and a thin cut traced across her soul. She told herself it must have been from a nail in the floorboard. She told herself many things. None convinced her. The days that followed blurred into one another. Oksana tried to focus on her work, taking photographs of the town, writing notes for her article, but the mirror house lingered in every corner of her mind. She could not drink coffee without thinking of the dark, rippling surface of the mirrors. She could not cross the street without catching her reflection in shop windows, where sometimes her own face blinked a second too late. The townspeople had noticed. When she entered the cafe again, conversations fell silent. Eyes followed her, lips pressed tight. She thought she heard someone mutter the word private, ghost, but when she turned, they looked away. The barista refused to serve her at all. "You shouldn't be here," the woman said softly, as if speaking to someone already half dead. "Leave before it follows you." That night, Oksana opened the photographs she had taken inside the house. She wanted proof that what she saw was only tricks of light. Instead, her heart nearly stopped. In one image, behind the cracked mirror, there was a pale face staring directly at her camera. Its eyes were colorless, its mouth twisted. It was not hers nor Igor's. When she zoomed in, the pixels blurred, but the expression remained, a smile too wide, too sharp. Her phone slipped from her trembling hands. She went to Igor the next morning. He looked worse than she remembered, skin pale, eyes bloodshot. His apartment was dim, every mirror covered with sheets or paper. Even the glass in picture frames was gone. "They're not just in the house anymore," he said hoarsely. "They find cracks, reflections, anything that shines. I see them in puddles, in spoons, in my own shadow." He clutched his head. "You broke some of the glass, didn't you? You set them loose." Oksana pulled the journal she had found from her bag, flipping to the faded entry. It said the doors open when the glass breaks. Maybe it was a way to release them, to free the souls trapped inside. Igor stared at her, horrified. "Free? Do you think they want freedom? They want hosts. They want skin." That night she tested his words. Standing before the small mirror above the sink in her rented room, she studied her reflection. Her own tired face stared back. Then slowly it smiled, though she had not moved her lips. The sight froze her blood. The reflection leaned closer, its breath fogging the glass. Its lips formed a word. At first she thought she imagined it. Then she heard it whispered directly into her ear, though no one stood beside her. "Stay." The mirror cracked from top to bottom without her touching it. Oksana fled the room and spent the night wandering the streets. Shadows seemed to follow her. In every darkened window pane, she thought she saw herself waiting, watching with colorless eyes. By dawn, she understood. The mirrors were not confined to that house. Whatever dwelled within them had spilled outward, and it had chosen her as its vessel. Igor avoided her at first, but guilt gnawed at him until he sought her out. He found her by the river, staring into the water. She did not blink, did not move. "Oksana," he called. She spoke without turning. "They're everywhere. In the water, in the glass, in the dark when it shines. They're learning to move." He felt sick. "You have to fight it." Finally she turned. For a heartbeat her eyes were white, then they flickered back to normal. She gave a weary smile. "I don't think I can." That night Igor dreamed of the mirror house again, though he had not stepped inside. In his dream the halls stretched forever, every wall a mirror dripping like ice. At the far end stood Oksana, her back to him. Dozens of reflections surrounded her. When she turned, every version of her smiled at once, mouths opening in perfect unison. The sound that came out was not hers, but a chorus of shrieking voices crying his name. He woke drenched in sweat, but worse was the trembling sound from across the room. The mirror he had covered with cloth was quivering, as though something pressed from beneath. In panic, he tore it from the wall and smashed it on the floor. Shards scattered across the carpet. For a moment he thought he had silenced it. Then the fragments began to shift, each one catching faint light. In every shard he saw an eye, blinking independently, all staring back at him. He fled his apartment and did not return. The next days were a blur of exhaustion. He drifted through the town in fear, drawn always toward Oksana. He watched helplessly as she changed. Her skin grew paler, her movements slower, as if someone else were learning how to wear her body. She began speaking less, but when she did, her words came with a strange echo, as though another voice overlapped hers. Once he saw her standing before a shop window, hands pressed against the glass. Her reflection did not match her movements. It grinned while she stood motionless. He dragged her away, heart hammering, but she only whispered, "They're almost here." The town itself seemed to feel it. People crossed themselves when she passed. Windows were shuttered. Children hid. The old women in the market muttered prayers. Everyone knew the story of the mirror house, though no one spoke it aloud. And now everyone knew she had brought it into the streets. Igor tried to find answers. He searched the local archives, spoke to the town's oldest inhabitants, pieced together fragments of the house's history. The merchant's name was Savely Antonov, a wealthy man who traveled across Europe in the 19th century. He collected mirrors obsessively, each one said to be unique, crafted by masters who swore their glass held more than reflections. Some whispered that Antonov had been searching for immortality. Others claimed he had lost a daughter and wanted to speak with her soul. In the records, Igor found a description of Antonov's final days. The doctor who had seen him wrote of the merchant's skin turning gray, his eyes fading to white. He spoke only in whispers, as though listening to someone in the room when no one else was there. When he died, the servants refused to enter the hall where he was found. They claimed his body sat upright in front of a mirror, and that in its glass he still moved for hours afterward. Igor closed the book with shaking hands. That evening he met Oksana again, though he almost wished not to. She was seated on a bench beneath the chestnut trees, her gaze unfocused. When he sat beside her, she turned slowly. "They've shown me things," she said. "What things?" He asked cautiously. "Other worlds, places where rivers run with black water, where cities crumble but no one dies, where people stand motionless like statues with faces turned away. They showed me myself too, 1,000 versions. Some smiling, some screaming, some already broken." She touched her chest. "And they ask me to choose which one I will become." Her voice was calm, but Igor saw the tremor in her hands. He wanted to shake her, to tell her none of it was real. Yet he knew the truth. He had seen the mirrors himself, felt their pull. "Maybe we can stop it," he said, though the words felt hollow. "If we destroy the house, burn it down." She laughed, a brittle sound. "Do you think fire touches glass? Do you think walls can hold them? The house is only the mouth." The voice already spreads. As if to prove her words, a noise drifted through the trees. A whisper, too faint to belong to any person, yet it surrounded them. Igor stiffened. The leaves did not rustle. The air was still. But the voices were there, countless and overlapping, like a crowd behind a closed door. He pulled Oksana up and led her away, heart hammering. But the whisper followed, clinging to the edges of sound until he thought he might lose his mind. That night, desperate, he returned to the mirror house. Perhaps he thought he might find a way to end it, or at least understand. The door hung open, waiting. Inside, the air was suffocating, thick with dust and something sweeter, almost metallic. He carried a lantern and a hammer. Each step echoed too loud. He struck the first mirror he saw. Glass shattered, ringing like a scream. For a moment he felt triumph. But then the fragments quivered, and from each shard pale fingers began to push, reaching outward. He stumbled back in horror as faces pressed against the edges, mouths opening. The shards scattered like insects, crawling across the floor toward him. He fled into the deeper halls, mirrors flashing on either side. His lantern flickered, dimmed, then went out, leaving only the faint glow of reflections. In the darkness, he saw himself multiplied endlessly, all running with him, but not all matching his movements. Some lagged, some grinned, some stopped entirely to watch him with blank white eyes. He screamed and hurled the hammer at the nearest wall. Glass rained down, and for a moment the world itself seemed to crack. When he burst outside into the night, he was bleeding, his arms slashed by glass. But worse was what he saw behind him. The house no longer stood silent. Every window glowed faintly, every mirror alive with movement. Dozens of faces pressed against the glass, watching him go. The next day, the town awoke to find strange things. Windows fogged from within, though no one had breathed on them. Puddles reflected not the sky but twisting shapes. People whispered that they heard voices in spoons, in polished metal, in their own eyes. Fear spread faster than fire. Oksana did not appear for days. When Igor finally found her, she was standing at the river again. But this time she was not alone. Dozens of reflections filled the water, not hers but others, men and women with hollow faces, mouths open in silent song. She stood between them and the waking world like a priestess. "They want me," she said softly when she saw him. "They chose me because I looked too long. They say I can open the way." "No," he pleaded, "you can fight them. You're still you." Her eyes shifted, pale for an instant. She shook her head. "I don't know where I ends anymore." That evening, thunder rolled across the valley, though no storm followed. The town fell silent. Lamps flickered in windows. In every dark pane of glass, figures began to gather, faint at first, then clearer, pressing against the other side. The townspeople barred their doors. Prayers rose into the night, but one by one, mirrors cracked in houses, spilling whispers into the rooms. Some swore they saw hands reaching out. Others claimed they woke to see themselves standing at the foot of their beds, watching with colorless eyes. Igor tried to rally them, but no one listened. He was cursed, they said, like the girl. The curse would consume them all. At last, he returned to the mirror house again, determined to end it or die. This time, Oksana was there. She stood in the great hall, surrounded by mirrors alive with shifting faces. They murmured like a sea, all voices blending into one. She looked serene, almost holy, as though she belonged to them. "You can't stop it," she told him. "This is bigger than us, bigger than the town. The glass is only a window. Beyond it is forever." He lifted a shard of broken mirror, sharp enough to cut his palm. "Then I'll break the window." She smiled sadly. "Break one and 10 more open. Break 10 and 100 awaken. You can't fight infinity." The mirrors shivered violently. The faces within leaned forward, pressing harder. The air throbbed with whispers. Igor's vision blurred. He thought he saw himself among them, white-eyed, grinning. The pressure in the hall grew unbearable, like the air itself thickened into water. Igor struggled to breathe. His heart pounded as the whispers climbed higher, splitting into shrieks that pierced his skull. The mirrors no longer reflected anything familiar. Instead, they showed endless corridors, pale landscapes, frozen figures staring with hollow faces. Oksana stepped closer to him. Her eyes were fully white now, but they glowed faintly as though lit from within. "Don't fight it, Igor. They can give us eternity. No death, no pain. We'll live in all reflections at once. Don't you see?" "It's freedom." "Freedom?" His voice cracked. He lifted the shard, trembling. "That's not freedom, that's erasure." She tilted her head, listening to voices he could not hear. Then she smiled. "Maybe erasure is mercy." The mirrors convulsed. Cracks spread across their surfaces like veins of lightning. From within, hands pressed outward, dozens at first, then hundreds. Faces pushed closer, lips moving in unison. The glass bulged soft as liquid, and Igor realized they were coming through. In desperation, he hurled the shard into the largest mirror. It struck, embedding deep. For an instant, silence fell. The reflection shattered, not into pieces but into darkness, a yawning void that sucked at the air. The voices screamed, furious. Wind roared through the hall as if the house itself inhaled. Oksana was dragged toward the rift, her hair whipping wildly. Igor caught her wrist, pulling with all his strength. She looked at him, her face torn between terror and something else, longing. "Let me go," she whispered. "This is where I belong." No, he tightened his grip, his muscles burning, but the pull was stronger. Her body stretched toward the void, her features warping, fragmenting like broken glass. She screamed once his name, or maybe the name of the thing inside her, and then her form dissolved into the darkness. The rift snapped shut. The mirrors went still. Igor collapsed to his knees, sobbing. The hall was silent again, dust drifting through the air. Every mirror was cracked, blackened, lifeless. The voices were gone. For days afterward, the town breathed easier. No more whispers in the streets, no pale faces in puddles. People began to believe the nightmare had ended. They avoided Igor, but they no longer cursed him. The cafe opened again. Children played cautiously in the square. But Igor knew better. He still saw her. At first only in dreams, Oksana standing in endless corridors, her eyes glowing faintly. She would smile sadly, whisper his name, then vanish. But soon she appeared elsewhere. In the sheen of rain on asphalt, in the glass of an empty bottle, in the faint reflection of his own eyes. Always watching, always waiting. One night, drunk and broken, he stood before the black river. The water rippled with moonlight, but beneath it he saw faces, countless and wide-eyed. At the center stood Oksana. She raised her hand to him, lips forming silent words. "Come," he almost stepped in. Almost, but fear held him back. He stumbled away, shaking, clutching his chest. Time blurred. Weeks passed. He grew thinner, haunted, speaking less. Some said he had gone mad. Others swore they heard him talking to mirrors in the market, whispering like a lover. Then one morning his apartment door was found open. Inside, every mirror had been smashed. Blood streaked the floor, but no body remained. Only fragments of glass glittered in the light, each one holding a faint reflection of Igor's face. The town fell silent once more. Whispers spread. Some said he had joined her. Others claimed he had been dragged into the glass, his soul scattered across the shards. Life returned slowly, though fear lingered. The mirror house stood abandoned, doors sealed with chains. Yet travelers still reported strange sights, faces in windows, whispers in the wind, a pale woman by the river whose eyes glowed white. And sometimes, when the moon was bright, villagers swore they saw Igor too. His figure walked beside her in the reflection of the water, though never on the shore. The house waits still. Its mirrors, though cracked, never lose their shine. They glimmer faintly as though something inside leans close, listening, patient. The town avoids it, but the forest remembers the path. Sooner or later, another stranger will come, curious, camera in hand, eager for a story. And the glass will open again. Months later, the town tried to forget. The cafe filled with quiet laughter again, though every mirror was covered with cloth. Shops polished their windows less often. Even the river was avoided at night. People said little, but their eyes always flicked toward glass with unease. One autumn evening, a group of students from the city arrived. They were young, loud, armed with phones and curiosity. They had heard rumors about the mirror house, about disappearances and cursed reflections. To them, it sounded like an adventure, something worth posting online. The locals warned them. An old woman spat at their feet and told them the house was a mouth that never closes. But the students laughed, brushing it off. That night they went anyway, carrying flashlights and beers. Inside, the house greeted them with silence. Dust rose in their beams of light, boards creaked but nothing moved. They jeered at the warnings, filmed themselves making faces in the cracked mirrors. "See, nothing but old glass," one of them said. Another, braver, lingered in the great hall. He raised his phone, grinning at his reflection, but in the screen his smile wavered. Behind him in the glass stood a pale woman with white eyes. His laughter died. The phone slipped from his hand. The others gathered, mocking him, until they too saw her. Oksana, or what was left of her, watching from a dozen mirrors at once. She lifted her hands slowly, palm out, as if pressing against invisible glass. The hall grew colder. The flashlights dimmed. The mirrors rippled like disturbed water. Someone screamed. The town heard them faintly, like echoes carried on the wind. No one went to help. When dawn came, the students' van was still parked on the edge of the forest, doors open, headlights dead. But inside the house, nothing remained except shards of glass scattered across the floor. Each shard held a reflection, but none matched the room around it. That week, whispers returned to the village. Windows fogged again without breath. Children cried at night, claiming they saw pale faces in their bedroom mirrors. A fisherman swore he saw a crowd walking beneath the river, their eyes white and glowing. The mayor ordered the mirror house burned. Villagers